This is Rob Tebbutt for Boxing Social in association with Betfred. Delighted to be joined here today by probably one of the most viewed men on Boxing Social during the lockdown. It's Steve Goodwin. How are you, Steve?
I'm good, Rob. How you doing?
I'm very well, thanks, mate. Very well.
Good.
Yeah, as I mentioned, you've been on Boxing Social an awful lot lately. You've done your lockdown lowdowns, your Instagram live. Probably been one of the busier men in boxing during lockdown.
Well, I think it's important to give your boxers and people in the boxing community a bit of support. It's okay doing it when you're staging shows and people are trying to make money out of them, but at the moment they're at home, and it's nice to give them a bit of exposure, and also bring in other people that are interested in boxing and create a little show that runs a couple of times a week, and it seems to have been received well, and our boxers feel a bit valued that they get the opportunity to do that as well.
Now, outside of lockdown, I mean, obviously including lockdown as well, apparently, you're one of the busiest men in boxing. You've got clients all over the country. How big of a difference has your life been in the last 8 weeks compared to what it was before lockdown?
It's not been any different apart from, I mean, we're still signing boxers. I just signed another one before our call today. So we're still signing boxers in a different way, and we're still having meetings with boxers. But what we're missing is the organising of the shows as far as boxing is concerned. In my financial business, I'm just flat out busy, even more so. We're flat out doing that, so that's no different. I'm working on normal hours with that. But just missing the social aspect of things, of the little things that you like to do, socialise with your friends, and just little things like that, and watch live sport on TV or attend our shows. So it's been difficult, but as long as we can all get through it healthy, and that's all that matters at the end of it. But I'm quite happily coping with it. If I have to lock down for another many months, that's what I'll do.
How are your fighters dealing with it, Steve?
They seem okay. I mean, I've been honest from the start. I mean, when this was pulled in, we're going back now 7 weeks ago, I told them honestly my thoughts, and it was not, obviously when we started, I said that although we left our shows running in September, we immediately cancelled every show in May, and people were going, why are you cancelling shows in May and June? I said, because there's no chance. And I said, I will leave shows in September open. Unless there's a vaccine, they won't happen either. That's true. And I said, but my honest opinion is we probably won't be back, barring some other intervention, not in the format we're running at the moment, probably till March next year. And I said, you've got to treat this like you have an injury. Now, what is going to happen is that people like Eddie and Frank are going to see this as a way and a means to pick off some of our undefeated boxers, to put them in these weekly live shows and get them beaten, right? When I say 50-50, use their prospects, because they can't put their 6-0 prospect in with a 2-25 journeyman, because TV are not going to buy that. So they're going to need opponents. So they're going to come out and try and lure boxers who are frustrated to go in with their prospects. Now, for some boxers, that may or may not be good, but for the majority, that's not really going to be a good call. So this is what you're going to see. So my thing is to try and guide some of our boxers away from doing that, unless it makes really good sense. And it's a fight I think they're going to win, and they're getting well paid for. But I think you're going to see a lot of small hall boxers just getting picked off by these bigger promoted stars. And that's what I want to avoid, unless it makes sense for us.
In your role as a manager and as an advisor, speaking to fighters who are, as you say, they're frustrated. A lot of people at the minute are financially struggling. How difficult do you envision it being? You having to tell them that no, you can't take this opportunity. This actually won't work for you in the long run. How difficult do you anticipate that being?
Well, it's not can't, because the final decision always remains with the boxer. So it is a situation of what they want to do. If the boxer, I mean, there's plenty of times when boxers have not taken my advice, and I would say 90% of the time that hasn't worked out too well. So I spoke to Linus Udofio on this subject the other evening, and Linus just said, I'm not going to change the route because we might not be able to box for 10 months or a year. I'm still going to go back to where I was before and resume where I'm going. If he was offered the right amount of notice, the right amount of money for a fight that we would take in normal circumstances, we might take it. But other than that, we won't. Now, Linus is one of those that's quite astute, intelligent, gets it. other boxers may feel frustrated and want to take their chances. So if I said to a boxer, I will always convey every offer that I have to a boxer. And an example of this was Jordan Joseph, one of my light heavyweight, was offered a fight with Joshua Buatsi. And I turned it down. And then I said to his dad, I've turned this fight down, it's ridiculous. They rang me back and wanted the fight. And I said, you're crazy, don't do it. And he got stopped in a round or two. So it's that type of fighter they'll pick off. But again, if a fighter insists on doing it, I'm not there to say you cannot. I'm saying I'm advising you not to. And I think that's really important. So I can only give my advice, but if they choose they want to do it, then it's up to them. But that's I try my best to guide them as to what I would do. I always say, with every boxer, I make every decision. I say, if that was my son, what would I advise him to do? And on that basis, that's what I advise a boxer. And if I do that on every single decision I make in boxing, I can't be doing the wrong thing. But then obviously, like my son sometimes, he might not listen to me and they might not listen to me. So that's how it goes. But I will try my best. And I think if we get the right amount of notice and it's a fight we want, like for example, Cody Prosper would love, he's got an English champion, he'd love to fight Sean Dodd or Davis or something like that. If they give him enough notice, we'll go in and fight them. But if they're trying to pick off my 6-0 kid who I'm developing but is nowhere near ready yet for somebody who's 18, and I know my 6-0 kid's going to get splattered, I'm going to try and avoid him, advise him not to do it. I'm not saying that I want my fighters to have opportunities if it makes sense for us. But and I know, these bigger promoters, Eddie and Frank, are very veteran. They know their stuff. They're not going to put our guys in with their guys if they don't think it's heavily weighted in their favour. So that's how it is.
Now, obviously, I've been watching a lot of you lately on your lockdown lowdowns and your Instagram lives. You mentioned Eddie and Frank there as two promoters. I think you mentioned words along the lines of you didn't feel that promoters were doing boxers and doing the public the proper service with some of the information that had been given out. Just explain those comments.
I think that since we started, there was no, we were talking about shows that originally were being planned for May and June. And for me, there was no logical way that boxing was going to take place in May and June. Now, I'm thinking upon this just as a logical person who understands economics, who understands what's going on in the world, who understands what the stresses are going to be. So to actually be sort of touting that there's potentially going to be boxing in May and there's potentially going to be boxing in June, it does no favours because it keeps boxers training to an nth degree to possibly meet those dates. And boxers are trying, without the official facilities of gyms, to try and keep fit for these dates. So two things have been happening. Boxers have been breaking the law and going into gyms, or they have been working their nuts off outside gyms. Now, I don't think that does people any favours. It's not. So it would have been far better for them to say, look, there is no way boxing is going to take place in these dates. Let's scrub the idea of those dates and let's really aim towards, and I think July is a push as well, let's really aim towards August, September as a viable date, and let's all aim towards it. And I felt that the messaging wasn't consistent, and I felt that, and the board also, I felt, were inconsistent in this, as well. And I didn't think that there was a clear enough message. I mean, if we're talking about now, we are in the 7th of May, we're talking about a TV product trying to be run in July with no title fights, with no gyms open, right? How on earth can a boxer prepare for fight, let's say July is going to run, without having adequate sparring, because it's not looking like they're going to encourage that sort of contact next week, even on Sunday. What on earth are we doing as an industry when there is absolutely no situation of boxers potentially being prepared? I know where boxers have been told there's a date for July. Ringing trainers up saying I need to train. The trainer's not got a gym. Does he break the law? Does he said, but there were, and does he let a fighter get in the ring who's not had adequate sparring? I don't think it's right. I think the whole thing is wrong. And I think until gyms can be open for a certain amount of time, there should be no live boxing until boxers and gyms are able to operate, boxers are able to find sparring, and boxers are able to go in that ring fully fit. And there's no use saying, oh, well, they're all at the same disadvantage. There should be nobody at disadvantage when you're in a combat sport. You should not be hitting people until you are 100% perfect in terms of every single part of preparation. And I've just felt that it's hard for everybody is to get live boxing on TV. I get that. I totally get it. But I just feel that it's like a kick in the can. It feels like Brexit all over again. That we're just kicking the can down the road month after month. And I don't think that's fair. I think we all should have been, as an industry, a lot more realistic. Said, look, let's set this as a date. It's feasible. Let's aim towards this date. And I just don't feel it's been handled well. And it's not just big TV promoters. There's other promoters that were doing this sort of advertising shows, you know, in May when it was never going to happen. And that's around the world. And I just don't feel it's fair on the boxers' mental well-being because they don't know whether they're coming or going. If you say to a boxer, you're not fighting until August or September at the earliest, and that's realistic, I think a boxer can cope with that. I think it's difficult to say, oh, it's May, oh, it might be June, it might be July. I don't think that's good for a fighter's well-being.
Yeah, I agree. Talking about the British Boxing Border Control guidelines that were sent out, you've already touched upon it there, really. Do you think there's a risk, as you mentioned, not having the adequate sparring, not having time with a trainer, not having the correct time to even get in shape or get in fighting shape? Do you think that there's a risk that this could do more harm than good to the overall product of boxing?
Yes, without a doubt. I think every single way that you look at countries are reopening around the world, gyms are the last things to open. Look at Ireland. Ireland are opening. I said you can save live combat sports in July, but you can't open gyms till August. I mean, what on earth is that all about, right? I mean, how ridiculous is that? And yes, of course it is, because I just don't think that's appropriate. How can you have a combat sport like that? If your gyms are opening in August, then you shouldn't be boxing till October. And that's it. And yes, tough broadcasters, promoters have to suck it up, in my opinion. But I just don't see how you can have live combat sports where gyms are closed. Fighters are going to have sparring. You know they're going to break the law, right? You know somebody's going to break the law and go in gyms. But then if you're breaking the law and people are hitting each other and sweating and spreading the virus, because the virus isn't going away, they're just trying to subside it, but take boxing out of it. That's not right either. So sometimes money has to take a back seat and we have to try and do the right thing. But I also understand why promoters are going to try, and for TV companies are going to try and why they want to get the product out as soon as possible. But until the government announces when gyms can open, or gives a good idea, I don't see how you can start boxing shows.
You mentioned it there, kind of getting into sparring and in gyms in close proximity. You've sat ringside at countless shows. I've sat ringside at a lot of shows. You tend to sometimes be victim of a little bit of fluid sometimes in ringside in fights. One of the parts of the British Boxing Border Control guideline was no spitting on the canvas. I'm not sure how you're going to be able to police that during a fight, Steve.
I agree. I totally agree. They're not allowed to spit in between rounds, but you can have a situation where a boxer gets hit and fluid comes out of his mouth and nose and it hits something. I know they've got to treat. So what's the difference? Because it can be spread from that. It doesn't have to be spitting. We shouldn't be, but I don't think we should be back until it's safe, really safe for everybody. Safety should come first, and then we should. There are so many issues I have with this, and I agree. The Board of Control are trying to work within government guidelines. I understand the pressure that they're under, and I think and I'm a fan of the boxing board. I think they do a really, really good job for the sport. But I felt, and I thought they put a really good release out a few weeks ago, and then now we're all of a sudden aiming towards deadlines of fighting in July, when we're now on the 7th of May and there's not a gym open. And the boxers, and the other thing is, they've said that you can't stage title fights. So let's look at this from a product point of view. So you can't have a title fight. TV companies aren't going to want to watch 6 rounds with Journey. So are we going to watch people trying to fight each other for no belts, no money, unprepared, not sparring, with no preparation? What on earth is going on? Surely you're better saying, look, we're all trying to work for a common goal. Let's suppress the product and let's wait until it can be done properly.
Is it money, Steve? Is that what's the ultimate driving force behind this? Is it the financial aspect?
Well, you'd have to ask the companies. I guess I guess there's a commitment. Everybody wants to see boxing, so I don't think anybody's doing this with any bad intent. But I guess it has to be, doesn't it? It has to be the boxers want to earn, people want to earn money. I guess it's got to be money. But for me, we shouldn't even be having these conversations. We should all be working towards something realistic and everybody working together. But you've also got to remember, and I understand it, Eddie's going to want to get a jump on Frank. Frank's going to want to get a jump on Eddie. BT are not going to want Sky to get a jump on them. Sky are not going to want BT to get a jump on them. So they're all trying to... So I totally understand. There's no criticism of anybody. But I think in reality, if we let this product go out too soon and we have these issues, what happens if a boxer gets hurt and they get very tired and they get a bleed on the brain? What happens if that happens? And people say, well, hold on a minute, the gym wasn't open. He hasn't... Do you imagine if that happens?
It would be so detrimental to the sport.
I'm just trying to be honest, So that would be my concern. And I'm not a pessimist. I want boxing back as soon as possible. But I just don't... I mean, I've got to go by what Ireland did. You can't have the gyms opening after they're allowing boxing, combat sports to open. How on earth? Forget all the politicians. How does that make common sense? And my biggest criticism of everything in this whole pandemic, and I'm talking about government downwards, common sense. You can't... We're locked up at home. You've been locked up for how many weeks? I've been locked up for how many weeks? Aer Lingus flight comes into Heathrow 2 days ago with a packed plane, with the passengers told, we've got no hand sanitizer, but when you get to your final destination, wash your hands. Are you serious? It makes no sense. And the same thing with this boxing. To me, it makes no sense. And I just want... But I love the sport, and I want it to resume, but I don't want it to resume when something could go wrong. That's my opinion, and where the sport could be accused of potentially putting money ahead of... It's not like football. Football you can open up. People aren't getting punched in the head. They could get injured from a tackle. But football with no crowds, I get that. They can train on a treadmill at home and try and get fit and have a certain level of fitness. And if every footballer plays... If Arsenal play Liverpool and all footballers are about 70-75% fit behind closed doors, okay, that's all right. We can stomach that. If they get tired, they get substituted. You can't do that when you're getting punched in the head.
I agree. I feel like, from my personal point of view, as a sport, we're obviously a very unique sport. Boxing or combat sports in general are very unique. And we're happy to draw that divide when we're comparing boxing or combat sports to other sports like a football, a cricket, a rugby. But now football's coming back. That line has become completely blurred, almost to the point of invisibility. And we're now saying, well, football are doing it, so we can do it. And we're not realising that we are a completely different sport.
I mean, I don't think it's enough to say we're going to follow the government guidelines. Because if you were in Ireland and you're the boxing authority in Southern Ireland now, and you say, right, we're going to follow the government guidelines, boxing can come back on the 3rd week of July. Oh, but by the way, the gyms can't open till August. Is that acceptable? Does that make common sense? Of course it doesn't. So to follow the government guidelines is not an excuse. Same as it's not to follow the scientists' guidelines if the scientists are talking nonsense. You've got to follow common sense. Most judgments in life should be based on common sense.
How significant of an impact is this going to be on the small hall, Steve? Of course, you are a small hall expert. What do you envision the next 18 months looking like for the small hall?
Pretty desperate. Unless a small hall promoter can find a concept where they've got external funding, then I think small hall, and also until there is a virus, until the virus is solved, we get a vaccine or a really effective treatment, small hall can't function. Because let's take York Hall, for example. If you have no people buying tickets, it cannot operate. The promoter cannot make it work. On a secondary issue with York Hall, it's probably the best breeding ground for a virus that you've ever been into in your life. Okay, so it's not well aired, and it probably may not even pass the new board regulations under the current climate of having to be very clean and disinfected and everything like that. But a small hall may have a cost of, depending on where they function, of 10 grand in a small venue to 20 grand in a big venue to put a show on. If you have no ticket sales and you've got opponents to pay, how on earth can that financially work? And if you then say, well, we're going to open York, let's say that for some mad reason they said, right, we're we're going to open up the venues, the small hall venues. How many people are going to want to go into a venue where there's 200 to 300 people dying a day? The virus is still being passed around. The social distancing is becoming the norm of behaviour. They're not going to go in. So realistically, you can't have small hall as it is with packed venues opening until there is a virus found. And our best chance of a virus is the Sarah Gilbert Oxford theory with AstraZeneca are producing it now. But even that, which is the most optimistic one that you found, is saying fourth quarter. They're hopeful they can have the vaccine for the fourth quarter. So let's assume that that's the case. You then took the small hall back in March. And even then, people may be financially not able to, people will not be able to sell the tickets they used to sell. So in my head, I'm thinking of March next year as a realistic target, unless there is a concept where there could be 300 or 400 people in attendance or something like that, or there is stuff where, like TV, where there's some external revenue to support it. But small hall as we know it, which depends on ticket sellers to generate sales, I cannot see that being a viable proposition until there is a vaccine or an effective treatment.
Oh, it doesn't. It sounds. How long ago does it feel like we had boxing, Steve? Honestly, I mean, like it's. I kind of catch myself doing these interviews, and it's almost as if it's an out of body experience that we're even talking about this stuff. It still seems so surreal, even though we've been locked down for so long.
I mean, we had a show that we were involved in, which was on the last day of boxing, which was the 14th of March, right? And I was sitting in this show. I was sitting there, feeling so uncomfortable about being there, feeling we shouldn't be doing this. And that was then. And I was really uncomfortable in that show. And I think, but I'm badly missing the sport, badly. And I think the sport will recover like it will. I think there'll be casualties. I think there'll be casualties both from a promotional perspective and a fighter perspective. But the boxing will recover and it will get back, and we will get back to where we were. But it's really important, as I say, that we do it right. I don't want my fighters getting ready for September dates when there's no gyms being opened. One thing I would insist, and what we were just talking about with fights, I would not permit my fighter to go into a ring if he hadn't been in the gym and hadn't been training. And I don't believe any of the trainers I work with would allow that to happen either. So, you know, there's no chance of that. You know, I would let a fighter do it if he was fit, even if it was the wrong decision. I won't let them put their health at risk. I won't have my fighter go in a ring with their health at risk. A lot will change. I mean, we've got obviously the announcement on Sunday. I want to see boxing back. If they decide they're opening gyms now, madness as it may be, and they want to stage boxing in July, well then boxing they're allowed to do that if the boxers can train and be fit. If they now announce on Sunday, I'm just giving a date here, gyms can open in July, you can't have boxing in July.
You mentioned casualties, be it promotional or fighters. A lot of promoters who I've spoken to, a lot of fighters who I've spoken to. I mean, I'm talking about fighters as I won't mention any names, but Commonwealth champions of the like are worried about their future in the sport, financially being able to support themselves and actually see the return of boxing. How big of a danger is that for certainly fighters on the small hall, but any kind of fighter really? And keeping themselves afloat during this time, and how many fighters do you expect to potentially lose to this?
Well, I think the first issue is I've always been an advocate that no small hall fighter, and even some of the bigger fighters, should be full-time professional. I've always told all of my fighters, it's something I've been preaching for years, that they should all have a job. Rendell Munro had a job. Josh Warrington had a job for a large part of his career. Have the job, because boxing is something you're trying to strive to. But a lot of boxers have tried to live the life of a professional when they're not getting a professional salary, and they might be doing it on the back of sponsorship or stuff like that. Now, they are going to find it difficult because they haven't got a job. For the fighters that have a job and they're doing it right and they're having the boxing works alongside the job, then they probably, hopefully, still got their jobs, so it won't be too big an issue for them. It's the fighters that depend on sponsors who will probably have lost a lot of their sponsors that will go. Now, the fighters that, for example, maybe Commonwealth title level, a Commonwealth title doesn't pay massive money. So I don't know, what would you get? Let's circle it at 15 grand for a Commonwealth title. Maybe we can get some, depending on what fight it is. Some could be more, some could be less. But if a fighter's pays manager and trainer and walks out with 10 grand, and then has to pay tax on the 10 grand, it's not a lot of money. You should, even at that level, it's not full time. I think if you're at British title level and you're earning circa of the 30 to 100, whatever that you're in that zone, then maybe you could consider being a full-time professional. And until then, you shouldn't really do it. And I understand boxers saying, yeah, but I like to train 3 times a day. But in reality, you should only do that when you get to a certain level. And going through the smaller hall process of getting to 5-0, 6-0, 7-0, you don't need to be full-time to do that. You could do that being part-time and having another job. It's only when you reach a certain level that you need to go full-time. And that's something that I think is going to be more prevalent going forward. And I think boxers will understand this when I try and explain this to them a bit more. In terms of casualties, I think there could be more casualties from the full-time level than there will be at the part-time level. The small hall guys that have got another job who are just making their way in the sport, then I think they'll just treat it as a year, as an injury. It's what I tried to say to them. Treat it as a year out. I mean, if it is a year, treat it that you've had an injury. You could have had an injury for a year, and let's come back and resume your career, and we'll be better than ever, and we'll be more motivated than ever, and we can do it. Those that depend on a living from boxing and want to be full-time pros may get another job, have to go and get a career and a job, and may not want to do boxing part-time because they may not want to, so they may go. And these guys that are at the Commonwealth level and their fights aren't enough to fight that infrequently, they're in trouble, so they may be forced by their wife and children to go and get a job and may not wait for this all to play out. So I think there will be a number of casualties. Put a number on it is very difficult. I think you'll get a lot of home boxers on the small will become journeymen because they'll turn around and say, well, I need to make money for my family. The easiest way is to go in the away corner. So I think you'll have a massive amount of journeymen, which will help because it'll stop the foreign imports. So that will be a help. But I could see that if you ask me to pick a figure of boxers, I think you could lose somewhere between 15 and 30% of boxers.
Wow, that many.
But you will get a lot more signing up.
Oh, yeah.
So what I'm finding at the moment is a lot of boxers coming to me wanting to turn over for the new set. So I think that there'll be a lot of ones at the bottom coming in. What I think you're just going to lose is a lot of the existing boxers, but they will be replaced, I think, from one starting off. As far as managers and promoters are concerned, especially managers, there's people out there that have a full-time living out of boxing, whether they be managers, trainers, or whatever they do. They're going to be hit quite hard, and if that's their only income, they're in trouble. Because I don't believe also that when we do come back, I think margins will be squeezed even more. So there'll be a lot of maybe the smaller hall promoters who can't make it work, who depend on, they can't, so unless you've got money come from external sources, the chaps out there who are promoting who need to try and make 1,000 a show or 2 a show, they put these very small arenas where they can make money because they're not worried about the product as such, it's about turnover of shows. They could struggle. For someone like us, who all of the promoters that we work with within our franchise, all of them have other jobs. So all of them, they love the box, they love the sport, so they'll be able to resume and come back. I'm fortunate that for me personally, boxing is not my income. My income comes from my financial business, so I'm able to continue. So we'll be okay, but that's not adorable. So I think that we're okay, but there will be some casualties, and I think it's really sad, but it's going to be hard, but I think it's going to be a lesson going forward for boxers not to be full-time pro until they get to a certain level. But remember, the boxers are under pressure by certain trainers because some trainers won't take boxers on unless they're full-time pros. And sometimes I think that's irresponsible.
Just finally, Steve, before I let you go, Well, before I let you go, because I've actually got a video of yours and he's put on the channel. How do you anticipate this impacting fighters' purses coming back?
Oh, they're going to be screwed. Definitely in the shorter term. I mean, for example, if I've got a guy fighting for a British title and I'm out and my fighter goes for a purse bid and I'm up against Eddie Hearn and Eddie's not paying enough, which can often happen because Eddie will, he won't pay as much as I asked for, which is it's okay, and Frank would be the same. It's perfectly good business. What I tend to do is I will go to my financial clients and ask them to go and back a particular fight. And that's what I'm able to do, because I've got some wealthy clients. But they won't want to sponsor boxing generally, but if I say, look, I want you to sponsor a fight for me, they will come and sponsor that fight. So if, for example, I'm up against, let's hypothetically say I'm offered 15,000 for a British title fight, and that's ridiculously low. And I can evaluate that I can put a purse bid in for 50,000 for that fight, because I've got that backed. Eddie's not going to want his fighter fighting on my show in a small hall if he's one of his valued fighters. But I will go in with a 50,000 bid because I've got it backed. That would therefore enable me to negotiate a much better purse for my fighter. Now, in this instance, well, I can't do that. So if I've got a fighter for a British title and it's mandated, we're, to a certain extent, going to have to accept what we're offered. And that's going to be the same for a lot of fighters out there now. Not necessarily our fighters, even at the other end, they're going to have to take a pay cut because there's no revenue coming in. And by the way, this is no criticism of Eddie or Frank because I understand what their position is. But if you've got no gate revenue, your amount of money now has become less to be able to give to fighters. So I would imagine that purses could shrink quite a bit. So that's the other thing, is that fighters may quit the sport because they may want to earn X and they're going to get Y. And that's why I understand where the board are coming from, where they are trying to resurrect the sport of boxing for money and the promoters are trying to do. So I understand where everybody's coming from. Sometimes things are more important than money at some point in your life. But I think that going forward, that is without doubt the problem. And we've just got to accept that going forward, it's just where we are. It's just the fact that if boxers are going to box, they're going to have to accept less. And then hopefully when we get back to normal next year, the purses can start to rise again.
Oh, it's all so strange still.
I'm not, by the way, I might come across as I'm going to slit my throat, right? But I'm not like that. I am really optimistic. I'm positive, and I look at the positives. But when we are talking in reality, you've got to look at realism as well, you know?
No, and I think anybody of a level head and a sane mind can certainly see that from this interview. It's nice to, it's refreshing to have it straight to the point, Steve, and that's why you're on Boxing Social so much at the minute, because you tell it how it is. And
Thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem at all. Okay, well, I found that very, very interesting, and I do hope everybody who's watched this has found it as interesting as I have. If you have, good news, there's plenty more Steve Goodwin coming up on Boxing Social. Steve, this has been a real pleasure. Look forward to doing it again soon. Thanks very much for speaking to Boxing Social, and I wish you all the best, mate.
It's a pleasure, and all the best to you, Robin. Thanks for all your support during the lockdown. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Steve.
Cheers. Thanks a lot.